So we're now coming to the question and answer section on our Helping Refugees Learn English webinar this evening. And thank you to everybody who has sent questions in. I've got a number here. So what I'll do is I'll pop the questions in the chat, and then a panel member will give you an answer with some ideas as to what their thoughts on those might be. So here's the first one. I wonder about when to introduce beginners to written English. Do you do it alongside conversational English immediately, or let them get used to basic phrases, etc., before introducing what for Ukrainians and those from Hong Kong is a totally different script? Now, I wonder, Sophie, you've been teaching beginners. What are your thoughts on this?
I think one of the things I hadn't thought about before this last year was not only the business of a different script, but the issue of illiteracy in the home culture. So that just adds another kind of distance from the skill of writing. And so an initial answer is really, it does depend on the student, what their background is in learning and using their own language, and what their background is might be in terms of using a second language. We just saw in the video that Gassan, I think, was saying his second language was French. So he's already, as William pointed out, pretty used to learning and therefore writing. So I think I'd really want to get to grips with what the particular student had done before.
Okay, and Beth, any further thoughts on that you could share?
Yeah, I think, again, I agree with Sophie. It depends so much on the students. Things that I have done have just been little things with basic French, like doing welcome in maybe different languages and having that there when they come in, just like little bits and some signs and things like that. And sometimes also, again, it depends on a lot of things, but sometimes I would take something that they've said and write it up so they can see their own, what they've said, just to begin to get them aware of that and then kind of move from there.
So a good way of introducing perhaps written English, but not the first thing that we would do.
Right, right.
Okay, thank you. I think that's helpful. I'll move on to a second question which has come in. And this is from somebody who's already teaching refugees, and I'll pop that in the chat for you. They've said, I've tended to do a lot of conversation around pictures, which can be tackled at different levels according to who is there. So there's a great tip to begin with. Can you recommend any materials that are easily adaptable for different levels? So it's great that this question came in today, because Denise, you've got some ideas on this, haven't you? Could you just share a minute or two on what your thoughts are?
Yeah, well, about 2 years ago, during the pandemic, an organisation called Learning and Work produced some special materials called for conversation clubs. So to be taught by volunteers who had no formal EFL or ESOL training. So it was pitched at, church groups or just people who wanted to help out. And they produced these packs, and William's going to pass on the email address where you can get them. So it's really a pre-prepared lesson for you with lots of different activities on about 12 common themes, so shopping, health, schools, etc. And then there's like a pick and mix menu, so from a list of icebreakers and warmers you can choose something, and then from the main presentation of ideas, again there's a little choice and materials to back it up, and then further ideas for practice, for speaking practice. So these can be at different levels, and you can just pick and choose according to what you think will work well with your class. So that is a really good, an excellent resource. It does all the work for you, and it's just prepared activities. So that one I would say is great. And then there are other things like the Excellence Gateway that takes all the different levels of ESOL right from the beginning, and even the pre-entry. So that's what they call new to ESOL, would be the real lowest, the absolute beginners. So there are now resource packs for even the very lowest level, and that will save you a lot of time and give you the confidence to use them, because they have been professionally prepared by experts, and they work. So there's a lot of good material out there once you start looking.
Thank you, Denise. That's really helpful. Sally has also mentioned in the chat, look on the British Council Nexus site for lesson ideas. That's another very useful resource as well. Okay, I'll move on to another question. This one has been already posited by Rose, who's sort of, I think, slightly nervous as to what's going to happen at the end of June. I'm told my students are going to be advanced. What should I do? And I believe Rose has got a number of Ukrainians coming over, and she's going to be teaching them. Beth, can I throw this one over to you to begin with?
Sure. And I think somebody made a comment earlier is, one part of it is, what does advanced mean? And I think you're going to need to take some time to suss that out for yourselves, whether or not that's from some formal thing or whether that is self-reported, those kinds of things. I think you need to, doing some activities that can give you some sort of a needs analysis and, in what areas are they advanced, those kinds of things. I think that's probably going to have to be a bit of your first tack until you really get to know them.
I also think, I don't think there's any harm in starting low, because that gives them some confidence anyway. Even if you pitch something that's really low, it doesn't matter. Just let them speak on it. And you can always ask subsequent questions, and that could help build their confidence as well. So don't be afraid to, it doesn't have to be matched perfectly to begin with. That'll be fine too.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. That needs analysis. Remember that people can be self-assessing themselves at a particular level because they, for a variety of reasons, they might actually want to stay with their friend. They may have different levels, but they don't want to be separated when they first come to a country. So they may put themselves at the same level so that they can actually be together. There may be there for an emotional support. If they're self-assessed, if their school has assessed their level, that could be somewhat biased depending on what the school thinks of them or wants them to be. If it's an externally assessed, like some kind of IELTS exam, you'll have more confidence in knowing what they present as. So perhaps do a self-assessment, a needs analysis when they arrive. Okay, it's a very catch-all question here. I've got some ideas, but I'm going to put it over to the panel because you'll have dealt with this more than me. Teaching mixed abilities. How do we manage it? Denise, would you like to weigh in on this one?
Splitting into groups is a good idea. So keeping students of similar levels together can work well. Alternatively, of course, you can have a weaker one with a stronger one, and then the stronger ones take some joy perhaps in sharing their knowledge and helping the weaker ones. That can work well, but it depends on the characters that you've got. Otherwise, I would say doing some sort of group work or project work so that they're working on a common topic, but they're being given the tasks according to their strengths, what they're able to do. So you can differentiate the tasks while working together on a topic.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. And Sophie, would you like to come in with anything on that one?
Just agreeing with what Denise said, but I guess what we've been doing not very long ago was to start off all together and then do a low-level activity to introduce the theme of the lesson, either with pictures or with just to get to know you questions, and then split up to do the different level activities along that theme, and then to come back together at the end so that the class felt like a whole class. They had that sense of, you know, all in it together, but we could be more attentive to their specific needs and levels in the middle.
Okay, thank you. I've got a slightly bigger question now, which we've had a chat about here, and this is, how do we maintain emotional separation? And I put that in brackets, from our refugees in a language teaching setting? Or when might it be appropriate to walk alongside, and when might it be appropriate to step back? And this is thinking about, when do we teach just English? When are we just English teachers? And actually, when are we something more? So it's actually going slightly broader, but I think it's a question worth asking. Sophie, can I come to you first just for some thoughts on this from your perspective?
Yeah, I guess firstly that it's quite hard. I think the more we get to know somebody, and you know, we and they get to know us, it's hard not to be really moved by what we begin to know they've been through, and what it means for them to be here and not at home. So just to acknowledge that it's not very easy. I think after that, it does depend slightly the context you're teaching in. So if you're teaching in a school or for a charity, there'll be good sort of systems in place, and it's particularly, I work with Refugee Services Devon, and it's just very clear that we're teachers in the classroom, and that there are other people we can go to within the organisation to refer students if they need some other kind of care, whether that's help with documents or whether it's something more you know, along the lines of counselling. But if you're in a church setting, then again, there should be safeguarding procedures in place if things are raised that are really particularly difficult. It's always good to kind of widen the circle, make sure somebody else knows what maybe you're bearing yourself, but also knows some of the issues that are being raised. And I guess we don't promise confidentiality in that. That's sort of going right further deeper into safeguarding issues, but so it does just depend on the context and knowing what the systems are. Yeah,
thank you. I think that's really helpful, and separating the cafe style perhaps from a formal classroom style. That structure, we would have that, wouldn't we? But yeah, that's useful. Thank you. We've had a couple more that have come in. And I think this one is probably fairly straightforward to answer. It's about forums and sort of getting help. What forums do you know that we can join that may be helpful? Denise, can I pass that one to you?
Well, I think there's a written one with Natekla and their ESOL teachers. And I think that you've got some information to give about that one, William. Natekla is a very good organisation connected with ESOL. It's a national one. It's for teaching of English and community languages association, but they do specialise in ESOL. And I think that they run something on Twitter, on social media. So for 1 hour a week, it's a sort of an open session where they all get together and swap ideas. We have our own WhatsApp groups for each class at RSD, and so one for the tutors to get together and to chat, to exchange information, or to make comments, and to help with lesson preparation, that sort of thing.
Thank you. And this is the final question that I've had provided pre-webinar. And this speaks into some of the frustrations you guys will no doubt have experienced. One day my class are here, the next they've been moved on. And another question has come in: how can I help my student find a class in their next area? So Beth, would you perhaps be able to explain? You've walked the walk, haven't you, with a number of refugees?
Yes,
tell us a little bit about what that's like.
Obviously it's frustrating, and I think one of the things that you do have to accept is the inconsistency, and it's not just sometimes one day my class is here and the next day they've been moved on, or sometimes they miss classes because of other commitments, and there's just a transitional piece to working with refugees. I think, and one of the things I didn't do in the past that I'm trying to do more of now is with refugees, at least be able to have information, phone number, so that I can keep in touch with them if they get moved on, and then go through whatever forums to see if there is a place, and then if that doesn't work, or in the interim, sometimes doing Zoom or WhatsApp meetings with them to just keep in contact with them, so they don't just feel like they're out there by themselves. So trying to get that information early on, of course with their permission, and then just trying to walk through it and find resources for them.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. It's a challenge, and it's disappointing for us, isn't it? When we know that we put time and effort, and suddenly they're not there anymore, and we don't know where they've gone. There is also a network called Welcome Churches that has a welcome refugee aspect to their website, so they know that if a refugee is going to a particular area, you can look on the Welcome Churches map on their website. That has now over 1,000 churches that provide support for refugees across the country. It's a fantastic network. We've referred people going from place A to place B, and they know that they will find a friendly welcome in that place, people that will be open the doors to them and welcome them in. So that is a good organization. So that's going to bring our session to an end for this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to welcome you. You'll be getting a couple of emails from us with those resources. Look out for that hitting your inbox probably in about half an hour's time. And for the time being, we'll say bye-bye.
Special thank you to Denise, Beth, and Sophie for your time as well. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much. All the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.